Hi, I'm Doug Stewart. For this episode of The Car Show, we're going to take some things that didn't make the other two episodes. So you're going to see some change of clothes, some change of daylight. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
The other day, I had the opportunity to be driving on a major roadway in company with the new Honda CRV.
Mhm.
And I want to applaud Honda for making a CRV free of weird design details that don't necessarily make sense to me. It's a really nice looking little vehicle. It's not terribly exciting, I think, in the world of excitement, but man, they really took a look, I think, at both the Tiguan and especially the larger, the XC90 from Volvo, in that it's got a very clean, a little bit boxy kind of design. The front end is still 100% Honda. It's still got the Honda DNA, but there's something about this car that's very classy and suddenly really attractive. And and forgive me, I know tons of CRV owners, they love their cars with good reason. It's always been an excellent automobile. This one really looks nice. I don't think the ones in the past have, and at least from my point of aesthetics. But it's funny because I pulled up behind it and I'm like, what's that? That's nice looking. And then I got into the left lane and passed it slowly and stared at it. And the driver looked at me like I was out of my mind because
It's another stalker.
it is. They're stalking my car. But yeah, really, I was like, oh wait, that's the CRV, and I was like, yay, I really like it. I'm very happy about that. So whoever took over the design detail at Honda, give them a bonus, because it just they took a line of cars that just seemed way overdone, yeah, and now they just look elegant and beautiful, and good for them. And they make a hell of a car. Everyone knows that.
I've always felt like car design cycle, I think there's good ones and really bad ones, and they tend to clump together. If you look at Nissans over the years, and I have a picture which I will use, that I had my 2001 Pathfinder sitting next to a Nissan Juke, and they were both silver. And like two polar opposites of Nissan design,
Right.
and you have periods where the cars look really good, manufacturer's line of cars looks really good, and I would say to a large part, like Ford's in that range right now. I think, a lot of the cars, I mean, especially I think Lincolns look gorgeous, but
yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting.
I was just going to say, there's no better example of the every other car thing than what is now the Mazda3, because they had the GLC, which was kind of an ugly little car, and then they came out with the Protege, which is a beautiful car, and then they replaced the Protege with something really not terribly attractive, and then they updated that and it was beautiful, and then they came out with the first three, and then they updated it, was like the current three, by the way, the sedan is a gorgeous car. The sedan, huge asterisk there, because the hatchback, what the hell? Every time I see one on the road, I was like, who was on drugs the day they were designing it, Mazda? Because the sedan is gorgeous. It's so sculpted and beautiful, and it looks, and then the hatchback looks like someone just took an air hose and stuffed it into the sedan and let it the car. It just, I don't get it. But anyways, that's my favorite. Like, every other.
You ever see those pictures of Labrador retrievers where they've gotten stung by a bee, and they bit into it, and I feel so bad for them, but their faces all
their heads get all misshapen and everything. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you, Glenn, about car maintenance tips, what you should be doing, increase value in your car, and you pay a lot of money for your car and you want to keep it running and doing well, right? So I'm going to start with some anecdotal evidence here. It's everyone's favorite kind of evidence is anecdotal evidence.
course.
So you have talked about your Toyota RAV4, which I
Correct.
really liked. I thought it was a sharp car,
Mhm.
but you took care of it. Okay. And my anecdotal evidence, the flip side of that is somebody I used to work with had almost the exact same model, and they did nothing. And after 2 years, the engine basically seized up because they didn't do oil changes. They didn't do it. It's like, yeah, a Toyota here.
Right.
You're
Right.
basically guaranteed you throw an oil change, some brakes at it, maybe so, every couple of years, some new, antifreeze, well, you're covered most of the ground and it'll run, it amazes me. So we're going with Allstate Insurance, has a bunch of car maintenance tips. So the first one here is inspect and maintain the tires. But, and there's a factor of summer to winter, tire, the cold weather changes the tire pressure and things like that. So, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, keep checking it, and know what a good tire looks like. I think that's the thing, is if you know when it looks flat, or looks low, then that's a kind of a good thing to keep in mind.
Right.
Go take a, when it's right, go take a picture of what the tire looks like and compare it.
When it comes time to replace, shop the internet, because the one thing I've learned about tires is that there's a huge price difference, and you can really, not only can you find really what you're looking for, but you can find the best prices by going online. As an anecdote, the tires on the BMW, because they were high performance summer tires, the original equipment wore out pretty quickly. By 17,000 miles, they were ready to be replaced. Yeah, that's a little low. I mean, they weren't terrible, but they were ready to be replaced. And if I can throw out just, a favorite place of mine, and PS, sidebar, asterisk, I'm not getting any sort of money from these people. But one of my favorites is TireRack.com, which will give you the opportunity to compare tires on a number of different testing levels: the ride quality, the sound quality, performance in rain, snow, dry, etc. And you can line up the tires that you're interested in, and find one that really works. I have found that their testing results are very true. Like, specifically on our former Celica, we had to get rid of the original equipment. They were very noisy tires. I got new ones of a different manufacturer, and the difference was night and day on that car. It rode better, it was quieter, it handled better, and it was just because the original equipment was crap, and that's the way it goes with tires. They oftentimes use a pretty crappy tire, when you drive the car off the lot. So, but yeah, that's my recommendation. Do a lot of shopping on tires. And PS, when we had it replaced during the pandemic, they came to us with the tires in a van. We parked the car in our driveway. The guy put the tires on, balanced them and everything, and we never even talked to him. So it was completely, they do that now. So you don't even need to go into a tire shop anymore.
Not my experience, but our good friend Bob Palumbo, just this past week had the tires replaced on his Ford Ranger. And they did, and went to Tire Rack, and they did that exact thing. They parked it at work, made sure that they could access it. Brand new tires, very happy with them. Changing the oil. I am pretty much a stickler on this. I think this is like, if you do one thing on this list, is change the oil.
Right. Right.
It's not that difficult to do. It doesn't take very long. It's not terribly expensive. And if you find the right kind of oil, and if you're checking the oil on a regular basis, you'll also, figure out if you're having a problem.
Right.
And that I grew up in a family with two brothers and a sister, and all of whom are much more mechanically inclined than I am. And my father was fixed calculators and very mechanically, back in the day when people had calculators on their desks instead of computers. And my parents bought my sister a car, and my father said, I want you to have one of your brothers show you how to do an oil change. And she goes, I'll have Doug show. No, I don't want your brother Doug showing you how to do an oil change. And I said, I resent that. I know how to do an oil change. You call up the garage, you make an appointment, you bring the car down, you pay them $40, and you have it. Okay. Anyway, and checking the fluid, not only oil, coolant, power steering fluid, brake fluid, transmission fluid. I think all are good to, it's good to have some sort of familiarity with what's under the hood. I would quickly add, you should ought to be able to know how to jumpstart your car and have jumper cables in your car.
Yep.
That's Doug's addition to the list.
Right. My personal place where I'm hypersensitive to, and I think you should be, the universal you should be as well, is brakes. Nobody likes spending money on brakes. They're generally expensive. They're really unglamorous. And who wants to spend money on a brake job? But my attitude towards brakes is never, ever, ever, ever let them go, because not only is it unsafe, forget the safety thing, but the longer you let a brake job go, the more expensive it becomes. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
I did that once when I was a kid. I'm like, a little bit of grinding can't hurt. And by the time the car could barely stop, I was opening the door and putting my foot down on the pavement, to keep the car from going just about.
Yeah.
I wore out a perfectly good pair of sneakers half a pair of sneakers doing that. By the time I got it in, the guy took one look at it. He was like, oh my God, you need everything. You need brakes, you need rotors, you need your brain checked, and it was an extremely expensive job. And that's how I learned when I was young and stupid.
Right. No, if you can get pads, you get pads, they'll cover you. You don't have to get you don't always have to have the discs and, But
right.
You wait a while, that's what you're going to get,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I am not mechanically inclined at all. But there are certain things I know how to do on a car that I feel comfortable with, and it can save you a lot of money if you can do the DIY. Don't go crazy. I would never attempt an oil change on my own. I just, I don't want to get that dirty, to be honest with you. But other stuff, I know how to do. So find your comfortability factor on what you think you can do maintenance wise on your car and go from there.
And if you can't do that, those of us who are not mechanically inclined and just know, at least I know what, if it's making X noise, I know that's probably why, it's probably, right. So I can go in with some familiarity into the dealership and say, whatever. Is a dealership or a mechanic, is you find a mechanic that you like and you trust, that you can, will take care of you, and you establish a business relationship with them and them for that's really important, and I happen to, the dealership where I bring my car, I like them, I trust them, and I feel like I'm going to get a good value out of it, and so my mother brings her car, we have the same car, and my mother brings her, and I feel perfectly fine having her go there. Testing the lights, my Subaru, I feel like I'm replacing a light every couple of months, and it's good if some cars, if you can learn how to replace your own lights, that's a helpful thing. More and more cars, that's harder to do with LED, and a lot of lights are really expensive. It used to be, you go down and buy a bulb,
Right.
And you and I both remember the sealed beam and plugging a new seal beam in there. Yeah,
Sure.
Rear lights, things like that. Quick tip, and I was explaining this to my mother the other day. Somebody said one of your lights is out in the back of your car, and I said, okay, here's what you do. you drive it into the garage, you close the garage door, you press on the brakes, you do all the lights, and look behind you, and you'll be able to see whether the lights are lighting up the door, right?
Right.
Simple as that. So, there's ways to do that yourself if you need to. And just figure out what's, and sometimes you can get in there and replace the bulb, and it's quick and easy, and it's like,
Sure.
don't have to
And
be
your-
mechanically inclined.
Most of your oil change places will check the lights now too, which is always, a great thing. So, and PS, if you think, well, could I possibly do this? There's probably a video online for your car on how to change the headlight. I'm serious. I was like, I mentioned our former Pacifica, it's for some reason, the front headlights were constantly burning out on that car. I don't know what it was, but, and after time number 3, I was like, okay, I got to learn how to do this on my own because it's happening a lot. Sure enough, went to the internet, and there was a guy who's like, we're going to walk you through how to change the light bulb on your 2006 Chrysler Pacifica. And he went through the whole thing. And the amazing part was, he was like, all right, so you're going to need to remove this whole assembly here. And you think, how do I do that? Well, that's because this piece right here, the big hunk of molding, bends. And he literally pushed it down. And I'm like, that you're not supposed to do that. And that's exactly what you were supposed to do. So, go to the internet. It's your friend.
Yeah.
Our A3 had a burnt out tail light. And I'm thinking, okay, good luck on the Pacifica. I can do the same thing on the A3. Nope, not on the tail light. You need all sorts of special tools and pretty much a degree in engineering to change them. So I went to the internet and there was like a guy, here, we're going to show you how. We bring it to the dealership. That's how we do it. So, the nice part about that is, Audi is one of your luxury brands. Their dealership's garage was cleaner than my living room. It was unbelievable.
A lot.
Thank you. I keep a pretty clean house, and I mean, you drive in, this place is just spotless, and of course you pull into this huge shiny garage, and then Hans comes over and goes, okay, so now we're going to change your taillight for you, but we're going to do it for free because we like keeping the brand, and it was like, thanks, okay, great,
Sure.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things about a luxury brand is that you will get spoiled on occasion. So, and when we had a burnt out tail light, they made a big deal out of the fact that they were going to fix it for absolutely free. And I'm like, that's part of the reason why I bought your car, So very fun.
And you feel like, hey, I only have an A3.
Right.
I am entry level.
Right. You make a good point, because our A3 was like the only complete strippo A3 ever made. Cloth seats. I'm surprised it had cup holders. There was nothing on this car, but it still had all the mechanicals. And I tell you, that car was blisteringly fast. I mean, it was crazy how quick that car was. So I could do a whole episode on the little A3. It was an enigma.
I'd love to have you do an episode of Glenn's German cars.
Yeah. Why not? I could talk for 3 hours just on Audi alone, the goods and the bads. And trust me, Audi, there were a lot of bads way back when. I'm looking at you, Audi. But yeah, it all falls back to my moral of the story. Terrific cars. Don't plan on owning them forever. They don't age out well. So we just rolled over 30,000 on the X1.
Really? Wow.
I took a trip down to Virginia, and in Bowling Green, Virginia, population 1,025. Salute. The car rolled over 30,000 miles. So it's been a good 30,000 in that car.
Good. Regular checkups. I tend to do this when I bring the car in for an oil change. One of the things that they mention here is having trained technicians diagnose the problem with plugging into the OBD2. Pro tip, a lot of automotive prep stores will go and plug into your OBD2 receiver. And if you don't know whether it's a port generally below your steering wheel, where you can plug something in and it will go and read all the diagnostics of the car. And the car has a memory as to certain things that happen and what might be throwing check engine light or something like that. So you plug in there and you get a readout. Lots of parts stores will do that for free. And you can go in and say, okay, well, X, Y, and Z is happening. And then you can kind of, then you'll at least prepare to go to the dealership and say, it's throwing this code and this is, so at least you're a little bit more aware of, you can sound a little bit more involved in what you're talking about. Washing your car is also on their list. And this is something I will admit that I don't do this as nearly as often as I should. But how often do you wash your car stuff?
I'm pretty diligent about keeping the cars clean. That's just a me thing. So a lot of your car wash places offer a membership now. Some of them are relatively affordable, some of them are ridiculous, but we had one that was literally a drive up and go through quickly and have the huge things blow your car dry quickly, and that was about it. It wasn't a very fancy car wash, but they had a thing where it was $20 a month and you could drive through as many times as you want. So it was a good way of keeping the car clean on a regular basis. I'm out and about for work during the day a lot, and in the winter specifically, the cars get pretty yucky. So that worked really well for me because I could just, pull in quickly, give the car a bath, and get all the grime, the salt, and the sand off the car, specifically in the winter. Not a bad idea.
They say check belts and hoses, and I think all this stuff kind of goes, it's good to become familiar with what's under the hood, just in general, so you can, I just think it's not that hard, and you can just kind of get a sense of what's going on there. And if you're looking at the belts and the hoses, and there's, the hoses are squishy and, they don't fit, they shouldn't be, and the belts are not tensioned properly. It's good to know that stuff. And their last point here is review your car insurance. And this is something that, I was kind of a set and forget kind of guy on my car insurance. And I went and talked to them not too long ago and said, what do you think I should do here? And they, it ended up going up like $10 a month. It's not very hard to get into an accident with a car that's really expensive. I was following an Escalade the other day, and I thought, well, that's $150,000 Escalade.
Right.
And it was my car. If I should hit it, what's
my history with used cars was so completely horrible that I will never own a used car ever again. I mean, just, how catastrophically bad my used cars were. I mean, really, really, really horrible. So I bought a used Audi when I was a kid. Just not a great idea, but it was a beautiful car on the outside. When it was running, it was, hell of a car to drive. It was front wheel drive years before most cars were. But this thing was a problem every single week. I
had one of those.
I mean, every time I fixed it, a week later, something else was going. The car finally committed suicide, though. The entire fuel injection system ruptured off the top of the engine, spraying gas all over the engine compartment, which subsequently burst into flames with me in the car. So, and I don't know if you remember Audis of old, but you could turn the radio and the heat on without the battery even being engaged or the car being on in any way, shape, or form. So car stalls. I've just spent thousands of dollars getting it fixed. I'm cursing the car, and suddenly plumes of black smoke come pouring through the vents into the car. I literally barely found the handle and fell out onto the pavement and crawled across Briarwood Drive on my hands and knees. And when I turned around, I could see that there was smoke coming out from underneath the hood. Silly me, I reach in, pop the hood, open the hood up, and it takes me me 5 seconds to realize the hood is burning hot. So, because the car was on fire. So a neighbor alerted my mom.
Oh, good. Because little heads you want in that situation.
I was at community college. I was all of about 20 years old, maybe, still living at home. And one of the neighbors called my mom. And can you imagine the conversation there? Hi, Inga, it's Joan. Oh, good. Yep. Oh, Marv did get that at the promotion at work. Yep. He's in a new department. Yep. No, oh, good. Good, fine. By the way, your son Glenn's car is on fire out in front of my house. So my mom comes screeching around the corner in her Lincoln. Right when the fire
all like this.
Exactly. You know, right when the fire department is getting there. She gets out of the car as the firefighters are getting out to fight the fire, and she goes, "No, let it burn!" We all thought we saw the face of Satan in the flames. That this car was just, it was possessed. So one last little note about the car from hell. My insurance agent took a look at the car and thought maybe it should be fixed, even though the entire engine had been burnt out.
It was charcoal.
So I had the car towed down to Hoffman Porsche Audi in East Hartford, and to have them do the quote on the work. And they came in at like double the cost of a new Audi. So my insurance agent called back and went, "Oh, no, we're gonna total the car.
We're gonna rethink that."
Yeah, we're gonna total it. So sadly, that brings us to the end of this episode. We will be back. We'll be back. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to comment down below. We love that. Thank you to everybody who has watched in the past. The positive feedback is a wonderful thing. If you have any negative feedback, just stay away from the internet. So no, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's terrific to do this. It's a great place to gab about one of our favorite things and hang out with one of my favorite people. So.
Same back at you. All right, everyone. Have a good night.